I plan on letting real estate retire me by 35 years old. So, how do I, as a blue collar worker, invest into real estate? That's a question I get a lot because real estate's a very confusing industry to get into. So, let's talk about all of the different kinds of real estate that you can make a ton of money doing, how it's effective, how it can benefit you in the long run, and how it can benefit you in the short term, and what you're going to need to get started. So before we start off with the bare basics of real estate investing, I want to say this is not financial advice. This is what I do with my own money. This is my opinions, and this is what I know about real estate. I wouldn't be what you would consider a professional, but I do really like numbers and I've studied a lot. So here we go. Number one, you need to focus on your debt to income ratio. Obviously, having a credit score above 600 is pretty pivotal when it comes to this, but having a good debt to income ratio is really what you're going to be looking for. Most of the time, they're looking for about a 30%. So let's say you make $10,000 a month, you could probably qualify for a $3,000 per month mortgage. Now, that's very important because when you start buying real estate, you're not wanting to get into something that maxes out that number. So if your lender contacts you and says, hey, you're good for $300,000, that does not mean you go buy a $300,000 house, because now you're done. Until you get a pay raise or you pay off that house, you can no longer invest using your standard loan application. So we're going to talk about some ways around that, but it'd probably just be smarter to buy a $150,000 house. That's exactly what I did. My lender told me, hey, you could afford $300,000. I went and bought a $140,000 house, knowing next year I could buy another one. So now that you understand kind of what they're looking for when it comes to your debt to income ratio, let's talk about the actual down payments and different loan options. So first of all, I'm going to be talking about house hacking or moving every single year. Both of these options are very beginner-friendly ways to start investing into real estate, only requiring a 3.5% or 5% down payment. Meaning for every $100,000 for 5%, you're in for $5,000. So let's say you end up finding a house for $150,000. That is $7,500 down, and then closing costs. You're probably all in anywhere between $10,000 and $15,000. Congratulations, you just bought your first house on a conventional 5% down loan. Anybody can do this. That is the standard loan, is 5% down. You can also do your FHA loan, which is 3.5%. I found that those usually have higher interest rates, and the interest up front is a little bit different compared to a conventional. So we'll just go with the conventional. It's probably best. We're going to talk about some downsides to lower down payments later on, but we're going conventional for this specific house. It's just a 2-bed, 1-bath, $150,000 house. You're going to live in it for 365 days or 1 year. That is what is required with a conventional loan. Now, there's some ways around that, but we're not going to get into that. We're going to get into too many things this video. So yes, just know there are some ways to kind of get out of that house early, maybe rent it out a bit earlier, but it'll really just come down to your circumstances and situations. So you live in that house for 1 year with a conventional loan. Now, you are now qualified to go get another house. As long as your debt to income ratio is good enough that you can float one more house. Let's say you want to go get another $150,000 house, then you can do that. That's what I did. Actually, I got a pay raise, so I went from a 140 house to a 230 house. I moved into my 230 after 2 years of living in my house, but I could have done 1. And then I rented out to my previous home for a profit. Now, here's one of the downsides to having a smaller down payment. At 5% down, my mortgage payment was $1,200. I could only rent that property for $1,500, meaning I'm only making $300 a month. If I would have done 20% down, like in an investor loan or an investment property loan, then I would have had a significantly larger margin or a larger profit per month because I put more money down up front. So instead of making maybe $300 a month, maybe I'd be making anywhere between $500 and $800 a month. Having that extra capital to put more down will increase your profits when it comes to this property. That is why banks love investment loans or 20% down loans. Now we are going to talk about those, but let's finish up with the 5% conventionals or the 3.5% FHA loans. Using those loans, you can also do a thing called house hacking. You don't have to live in that house completely by yourself. If you buy a duplex or a triplex with your FHA loan or a conventional 5% down, you do qualify for those. As long as you qualify for the number, the purchase price of the home, you qualify to buy extra homes basically. So if you do this, you do 5% down, let's say on a $300,000 duplex. So it's basically $150 per side, right? You're looking at $15,000 down plus your closing cost. Maybe you're all in $20,000 to $25,000. And your mortgage payment, let's say, is $2,500 a month. You get to live in one side of this house, this duplex. You can rent out the other side day one. You are living in the property. That counts towards your 1 year of a primary residence. So you can rent out all other units that you have. This works the same if you have a main house on a property, and maybe it's a couple acres, and maybe there's a trailer in the back, or maybe there's a mother-in-law suite. You can rent out these other units just fine. That counts. You're qualified for that. So by doing this, you may have a $2,500 mortgage per month for your duplex, but you're renting out one side for $2,000, or you're renting out one side for, let's say, $1,500. That then turns your mortgage payment into a $1,000 mortgage payment. The other person's paying more than half of it. And in some situations, you can actually get them to pay all of it. It really just depends on the rent market in your area. So that's something I wish I could have done when I started real estate investing, was buying a duplex or a triplex on a conventional loan. But in my area here in West Texas, we really don't build duplexes. And when we do, it is like $400,000 to $500,000. And I did not qualify for that. So if it's possible, if you can get extra units out of one purchase, it's a good move. You can live in it and rent it out, and it can decrease your income, which increases your debt to income. So that's a win-win-win-win. And then when you decide to move out and then you're making $1,000 a month, that increases it even further. It basically wipes your debt clean in the eyes of the bank. So like I said, with 5% down, you kind of have to watch how much of a profit margin you have. I prefer 20% down, and another reason why I don't do 1 year and move every year now, that was my original retirement plan, was to buy a house, live in it for 1 year, move to the next house, rent out the one before, repeat that process. And then I realized, number one, $300 a month really isn't worth it, and it seems like a little bit too much risk in my opinion. And number two, moving sucks. I hated packing up everything. I hated the stress of having to move to an entire new house and have to unpack everything and, find cords that I'm missing. And it was a pain in the butt. So I decided I'm not going to do that anymore. I would rather save up 20% and do an investment loan. Let's talk about investment properties now. An investment property loan, or just buying a rental house that you can rent out day one, is going to cost you 20% plus closing cost. So for every $100,000, you're looking at 20 grand down. That is a lot of money. It is very hard to be able to save that up and get into a property like that. But once you start that, you have higher profit margins. So it is significantly easier for you to save up the next 20 grand and the next 20 grand and the next 20 grand. And it's exponentially faster with every one you pick up. And the beautiful thing is there's no timeline to this, meaning you can buy one rental property today, and if you have another 30 or 40 grand laying around, you can buy another one tomorrow, and you could buy another one the next day. There's no timeline. You can rent them out the exact same day as long as you have the funds to buy these properties. Now, certain lenders are going to be a little bit different when it comes to investment properties. Some of them want cash reserves of a certain month timeline. So like for every mortgage you have, one of my lenders told me I need 6 months. So if I have a $1,000 mortgage, I have to have 6 grand on top of the 20% and the closing cost, just laying around, just in case that other house goes rented. The bank knows I'm still good for everything. So talk with a local lender, see how it works for you. Small local banks and stuff are usually a little bit easier on you at first than the larger corporations, because they really don't need to make money. They don't really need your money to continue doing what they're doing, but a local bank may be able to give you a deal. So an investment loan is 20% down, and you can immediately rent it out. You do not have to live in that house at all. And that's an awesome thing. It just requires a lot of capital to do. And it gives you a higher profit margin because you put more money down. Next, let's talk about rehab loans. the best way to do 20% down and get into a home for less money. A rehab loan is basically, hey, here's a really crappy broken down house. All the windows are busted out. This thing won't qualify for any bank loan to buy a home. So you have these rehab loans. Basically what you do is you say, here's a house for $100,000. If this house was fixed and it looked really nice, I think it'd be worth $300,000. But since it's not and it's broken down, we can get into it for $100,000. You would go to your lender or a hard money lender that is willing to do a hard money loan or a rehab loan. And some of them have different rules also. Like one of the ones that I use, like one of the ones I talked to was like, okay, your purchase price and your repair costs can't be more than 76% of your ARV, your after repair value. Meaning in the case that we were going to have a $300,000 house after repairs, we couldn't spend more than $228,000 on the purchase price and the fix. So if you subtract your $100,000 house from $228,000, you will find that you have a budget of $128,000 to fix up this property. That will then be worth $300,000. So how do these loans really work? Well, number one, it's not 20% of $300,000. It's not 20% of what the house will be worth. It is 20% of what the house is currently worth, meaning you will eventually have a $300,000 home, but it's currently $100,000. So to be able to get this rehab loan, you need $20,000 down, plus whatever fees and everything it is to write up this loan, and then whatever money it requires to get construction started. But here's the beautiful thing, that $128,000 worth of construction that you're willing to do to this house is paid for by the bank. The bank is giving you this money to fix this home. So let's say you're all in 25, 27 at first. The bank will pay for all of the construction after that. And once you're done, you do a refinance into a long-term rental. By doing this, you don't pay any tax on any gains that you have. We're going to talk about the profit here in a second. You might actually get paid to buy a home. I know that sounds insane, but let's crunch the numbers. So all in, your entire budget, right? The purchase price and the construction costs you $228,000 in this scenario. When you're completely done building it, an appraiser comes in and says, yep, this is worth $300,000. Sweet, we have our numbers, we're going back to the bank. And we're closing our rehab loan, right? The bank gets all of its money back when you flip this into a new loan, because it's basically like a refinancing your house, right? So you get all of this value back, and then you have $72,000 sitting there. That is $72,000 in profit. But here's the thing, we're not selling this house. We're getting tax-free money, but we also want to leave some money in there, because if we're going to have any type of profit margin, then we needed to have the down payment. So we take $300,000. That is like the new purchase price of the home. That's what we're refinancing. That's our new loan. And we do 20% down on that property, which 20% of $300,000 is going to be $60,000 plus whatever other fees are in there. So that would leave you with like 12 grand minus whatever fees also come out. So you were all in on this property, let's say $25,000 just to get into it, start construction, start the fees, all that fun stuff. Then you basically get the house and you get $10,000 or so back. And on top of that, you now have a rental that is tax-free money because you refinanced a home you own, and you have a monthly income of, let's say, $1,000 a month. 20% on a $300,000 home in my area would probably get you anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500 a month. So you can see there's profit there. Within the year, with no other income, you might be back at your $20,000. You might be back at $25,000, and you can do it again. And guess what? Next time, it's going to take you 6 months. It'll take you 5 months to get that $20,000, that $25,000, and then you can keep repeating that process. So that's how a rehab loan works. It's basically buying up a crappy house, turning it into a nice house, using the bank's money, giving the bank back their money, and you get a small profit on that, or you just get the house. You might just be all in for your $20,000 and then you're done. You actually don't get paid to buy the house, but sometimes in those scenarios, you do get paid to buy the house. Next, let's talk about land and commercial property. These are a little bit different. You kind of have to have a plan for them. It's not as easy as just buying a house and renting it out to somebody. These are both going to require 20% down. Almost every single time, land and commercial property is 20% down. And like I said, I'm not going to get into it too much because you have to have your own plan for it, right? I can't really tell you what to do with land. You can build an RV park, you can make a trailer park, you can build, you can demolish everything on the land, flatten it out, and sell it for a profit. There's a lot of things you can do with this stuff, but just know you're going to be in 20%. Next, let's talk about the short-term and long-term benefits and possibilities with real estate. Short term is pretty obvious. You're going to be getting monthly payments, and that's one of the reasons why I am banking on real estate to be my retirement plan, is because I can buy a property right now that is $300 to $500 or more per month that I'm getting right now. I can use that money. And then when in 30 years, when it's paid off and maybe I want to retire at 55, I do plan on retiring by 35. But in this scenario, let's say I retire by 55 to 65. I may have 10 to 15 paid off homes by that time. And if they're making a measly $1,000 a month, oh, you can do the math. That's $10,000 to $15,000 every single month coming in. That replaces my oil field paychecks. On top of the large lump sums of money I've had sitting in my retirement accounts this whole time. I probably have a couple $1,000,000 between my 401k and my Roth IRA, and I could convert those into dividends or other high-paying assets that will also pay me every month. I will be sitting pretty. That is why I'm banking on real estate, mostly because of the short-term payments. I like monthly payments. I like knowing my income increases. Also, long-term benefits, these become your bank. Oh, you need a loan? Well, guess what? You don't need to go get that car loan at 15% interest. You can take a HELOC on your property and buy your car in cash, and that paid off rental, well, guess what? It's going to pay itself back off. That car never comes out of your pocket. Yeah, you lose a little bit of income for a while, but if you're making 20 grand per month and you're living below your means, what does that matter? These things become your bank. They become an asset that you can hold forever, and you can take out money from them, tax-free money, constantly, pay for the things you need in your life or your lifestyle needs, and then they pay themselves back off. And guess what? They become scaling monsters. You can take a $150,000 house, take out your HELOC loan, take 100 grand out of that, it pays itself back off, and you have tax-free large lump sums of money that you can go buy maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 houses. And maybe you're going to do rehabs with those. So now you're flipping those into even more houses. You see how this adds up? That is why I love real estate. And hopefully this video helped you guys out. This is a very long one. I really appreciate you guys watching. I hope this helps somebody. Stay safe out there, guys. Thank you.